Good morning and welcome to Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. I'm Kristen and I'm so glad you're here. If you're already tuned in, if you're watching as a recorded version, please make sure that you've got some time to yourself. And even if you are watching live, let's all make sure we have time to ourselves. Let's get comfortable. That's what this hour or this time that we have here is all about, is bettering ourselves so that we can better serve those that we love, those that we parent, and those that we lead. And if you've been here before, you're probably noticing a few changes in the way that things are starting to show up, and that includes our title. So typically I've had Parent Power Hour as the title here on this time slot. But as we've been watching and as we've been hearing comments and feedback, it's not just the parents that are showing up for this. Sometimes it's teachers, and sometimes it's individuals who are looking to better themselves, which is what this time is about. And you don't have to be a parent, you don't have to be a teacher to do that. The only requirement is that you're living and breathing, functioning human being who is interested in bettering yourself so that you can better serve those around you that you love, that you possibly parent, and that you may lead if you're a lead on a team, in an organization, or in your family, or in your neighborhood. You just name it. So I'm Kristen, and I'm here for you for that. What I do is I pull in resources, I share ideas and thoughts that either I have assimilated because of the information that is around me, or because of resources that I've had the time to curate and gather and then pass out to you. So kind of think of me as like your best friend self-development buddy. I want you to be able to live your life as fully as you possibly can, and know that when you give yourself time and when you better yourself, that your whole life can come alive. Your whole life can open up and change. And this episode here is about exactly that. We're in the second day of a mini series of talking about crucial conversations. And I'll give you a little explanation about why this is important right now. It's been important forever. It will always be important. Right now, it's really emerging to the top to me because of the kinds of conversations that we're starting to have about moving out of this pandemic, moving out of our homes, about all of the restrictions being lifted. And whenever we talk about another change, and especially when we're talking about planning for change, the exact kind of conversations that we're having are the ones that are defined as crucial conversations. So I'm just going to show you really quickly about yesterday, about how we got into this conversation, and if you're interested, it's episode 30, and it's going to show up with a funny title. It's here on our feed and Facebook on New Minds Enrichment, and it's also on newminds.tv. So if you take a look here, I'm kind of playing around with the title a little bit, but talk about it. It makes it feel a little lighter when we have these tough conversations that come in. But you're probably here because you're thinking, I don't know if I have some crucial conversations in my life. Or maybe you're thinking, wait a minute, I know exactly what you're talking about. I've read that book before. Please help me remember. Please help me get that back in that way of thinking. And that's awesome. Like, if you've read this book, Crucial Conversations, before, let this be a reminder for you. Let this be a little flashback. Or if you're someone who saw the title and you're like, Crucial Conversations, why are they talking about that on an education enrichment channel, right? It's because here, it doesn't matter what walk of life you're in. It doesn't matter if you are someone who is trying to figure out how to lead your team, trying to figure out how to maintain your level of stress while doing online learning if you're a teacher, somebody who is parenting at home and setting up learning opportunities for your kiddos at home and working at home. You get the idea. So what is a crucial conversation? I'm not going to go deep into it because we did that yesterday, but it's any kind of conversation where you probably feel like there's increased attention, there's increased stress, and I bet you're probably even having some sense of feeling stuck, right? Whether it's with your family, your personal interactions, maybe even your colleagues on those virtual meetings that you're having, or maybe you just fear that you might say the wrong thing. and that's not a place that you want to be. So what we're doing here in this mini series is identifying the elements of crucial conversations. We're going to get to some tools for getting those conversations started. We're going to take a little style under stress test, and then wrap up the week with some quick tips for what to do when things get a little spicy. And my hope for you at the end of this is that you feel more confident, that you feel less reluctant to address some of these hard-pressing issues. You know that in your family you're going to have to make some choices about how you are navigating the lift that's coming or that's already happening possibly in your area. And then you'll also be working on accelerating the building of trust between individuals, which, as we all know, can never be something that is a step in the wrong direction. So I'm just fast forwarding really quick to the topics that we did yesterday so we can jump right in today, because today is about exactly the conversations we don't have. And if you showed up yesterday and you're here again today and you're looking for those practical tips to take away, don't worry, they're going to be a part of this as well. But I'm not sure if you've heard it before, but when it comes to problem solving, and then when it comes to researching, I think it was Einstein that said that if he has an hour, if he has 60 minutes to solve a problem, what's he going to do for the first 55 minutes is define the problem. And then the last 5 minutes he spends implementing a solution. So that's what we're doing here. We're defining this problem. We're defining the kind of conversations that we might be moving into that we're not feeling super great about, or that we're planning ahead in our head and thinking about, okay, we've got to position ourselves again in our company to think about transitioning back and transition light, right? Because you're not going to go fully back to all of the things that we used to be. So while you're trying to make these decisions, if you're leading a company or leading a team, leading your family, thinking about your classroom, you have to start thinking about the strategies, and we're already there. And so this is the kind of conversations that you might be hesitant about having. You might be hesitant about having this kind of planning conversation because maybe there's somebody on your team that's just straight up a prickly pear, right? It is somebody that you poke that bear and it pokes right back. It might even be someone on your team that has a little bit of a history of being a bully. I'm kind of stumbling on over my words because it's not easy to talk about, right? It's not easy to talk about people on your team or in your family that you just can't really ever say the right thing when you're around them. That's a prickly pear. Ticking time bombs are those people. That's pretty. That one's pretty self-explanatory. But it's those people that you're just like, wow, again, you can't say anything right, and you also never know. Whoops, sorry to mess around with your screen there. You also never know when the next thing is that you're going to say to them that's really going to just tick them off, and they're going to explode, and they're going to have an aggressive response and conversation back. And here you are, you already know because you've seen it. You've seen it happen. You saw your mother-in-law lose it on your husband the other day. You've seen, you've seen it on your team when the team lead. Maybe you're not even the team lead. You've seen it on your team when that person just shuts everybody else down, right? And you're like, hey, we're a team here. Come on now. And there goes all that safety. There goes all of that work that we did. And so those are those ticking time bombs because you've seen it. You've seen them blow up before. So you don't want to have a conversation with them either. There's also that element of laziness and incompetence, right? Nobody really wants to address those kind of moments. And it's really tough, and it really puts you in this position of like, if I go there, what's that going to make me feel like? That's going to make, if I'm talking about trying to identify the fact that, you know what, I haven't really seen you put in all the work that you need to do on our team, you're identifying that laziness. That is not an easy conversation to have. Every time I give you a project, this could go for your high schooler, let's get real, right? Every time your teacher gives you an assignment, you just halfway show up for it. And yes, I am filming from home, just in case you didn't notice. This is the dog that loves to communicate with everyone that walks past on the street, and that's what you might hear outside. So I'm just going to put that out there so we can all move on. But yeah, that incompetence. Hey kiddo, like every assignment that your teacher gives you, you halfway do. And that's them not really showing up. And it's not that they're completely incompetent, maybe when you're talking about your own child, but that's that balance between, is it too hard and are you just not putting in the effort into it? And if we're talking about your team or someone else that's in your community, it's not stepping up, that has a responsibility. So some of this is really specific to our work and our business life, and that is something I want you to keep in mind, that if you're thinking about this in your own life as far as parenting goes or being a teacher leading in a classroom, be sure to reframe what I'm saying because it can apply to that. And then, of course, you don't have a conversation. It's much harder to have a conversation. Let me put that back up there. So we've talked about those prickly pears. We've talked about the ticking time bombs. And, that power play. Yep, that power play. That shows up, doesn't it, you guys? Of as soon as you say something, they're going to push back because you can't tell me what to do. You don't know. Like that's um I'm always the one that's in charge, right? I'm the one who always knows everything what's going on, and guess what? You don't get to control me. So there we go. That's a power play. That's a power struggle, right? Or maybe even we're talking about you're working on a team and there's been someone that's on your team lead. Maybe it's your team lead. Maybe it's a boss at work. Maybe it is a neighbor that's just over the top with all of these restrictions, and you're trying to do a neighborhood organization situation and whatever the team kind of conversation is going to be, and they always resort to control and reliance on their position to really shift the agenda of the conversation. We've been there. That's why it's that power play, right? You're like, hey, who put you? Nobody put you in charge. We're just trying to organize a little street social where we all come out on our driveways and wave to each other. You don't get to bully your way through and tell the rest of us how this is going to go because you're the neighborhood alliance president. That's not the right title, but it's something like that, right? So we've been there too, right? In that power play. And then another conversation that is difficult for us to have is looking for clarity. If there's a clarity chaos. Now it's a little bit of a strange, excuse me, a strange way to phrase this. So let's see if I can unpack it for you a little bit. It's when people aren't really unsure about their position. They aren't sure they're uncertain around what their role is, what their responsibility is, when they should turn something in. They're uncertain about, well, am I just supposed to sit back and listen to you tell me what to do every day? This could go if you're parenting or if you're in a spouse, if you're in a spousal relationship. Think about these kinds of relationships as well, that you probably have some sort of history of getting clarification and history of those specific roles and responsibilities. And maybe now your job is poof, it's gone. But your spouse's job is still happening. It's happening there in your home. And that's been a role switch for you possibly. Or maybe it's opposite. Maybe you're the one that is up and going all the time because you've got meetings on virtual meetings and you've got lunches to make for kids, and your spouse is the one that has the major shift in their role. And they're the one that typically was always in meetings, always at work, always away, traveling. And now they're in the home. And that level of responsibility can shift. And having a conversation about that takes some crucial skills because you're discussing that shift of roles and responsibilities. And when you don't have clarity on that, that's where that chaos can come from. And one of the most powerful and destroying elements of that kind of conversation is a lack of safety when voicing your concerns. It feels risky, right, guys? Like, it feels risky to say, all right, so for all of life, I have prepped the kids' lunches the night before, and I've gotten up and I've gone to work, and you've dropped off the kids at work, and and we both, pick up the kids. We share that after work's over, and we both pick up the kids. And now I'm still working from home, and now you're here, and your company has eliminated your position. So now you're in the place where you could be making those lunches during the day. And you could, because like, woof, because you're already thinking, I bet you're listening to me and you're like, there's no way I can put that kind of responsibility on my partner. They've never done that before. Or maybe the last 6 weeks, you still have been doing it all. You still have been the one that's done the lunches, that's done the virtual meetings, that's done the work. And maybe now the shift is happening. Maybe now you're at the point where you're like, well, crap. Now we've pigeonholed ourselves and things are going to shift again, and we have to talk about our roles and responsibilities, because this first 6 weeks here in Dallas, we're in about our 6th week of our stay-at-home order. So I'm not sure where you're at, but think about that. Like, if you've just dealt with it because you're like, it's going to be over soon, we're just going to deal with it, I'll shift later. But all the while, things are starting to bubble up in your soul, right? You're starting to feel like, okay, more patience. I can do this. You're doing a lot of positive self-talk, doing a lot of centering, a lot of focusing on that goal, and things still have to change, right? Because you have to decide if that's your new normal or not. And if that's your new normal, then all that self-talk's got to shift too. And if that's your new normal, then you do need to have some conversations. You do need to sit down and have some clarity, because if not, that clarity is going to turn into some chaos, and you're going to keep avoiding that conversation. And we'll get to that in a second about some of the downfall of that. So these are the top 5 most common conversations that people don't have, and they're the top 5 most common and costly conversations. Prickly pears. You don't want to confront someone because they're rude and abrasive. They typically have a response of bullying and harassment. Ticking time bombs. We don't speak up to those people because they're usually riddled with inaccuracy, faulty thinking. It's worse whenever there's some sort of leadership position and it fails to consult some sort of experts to come in, or they're unresponsive to the feedback that they do have. And I'm talking a little bit more about work and organization. Please translate this for yourself and your family. Laziness, incompetence, maybe talking to peers, maybe talking to people in your life that have just poor work habits. They're lazy. They have a lack of reliance on position to push their agenda. And then, of course, this clarity, failure to get clarification when people feel uncertain around the roles and responsibilities, the timeline of things that are supposed to be getting done. All of those things are the things that can position us in a place where we are going to respond with one of 2 ways. And you've heard this before, and we've definitely looped this in a lot here on this time of this show, this 10 o'clock a.m. I'm like stumbling over it because we're in transition. I'm not calling it. It used to be called Parent Power Hour, and that label's being taken off so that anyone can tune in here and find something that can potentially transform their lives. So we don't have those conversations, and instead our typical response is to respond in either silence or violence. And I know you've heard this before, but let's break it down just to be clear. Silence, when we withhold our real thoughts and views from other people. When we end up having sarcastic and passive-aggressive comments, so we do say something, but it's passive-aggressive, or maybe it's aggressive-aggressive. And then also the silence can be the time between feeling the problem and discussing the problem in a healthy way is extended to the point where that relationship is broken. You guys, we think that we're saving our relationships. We think that we're saving the productivity of our teams. We think that we're saving trust by, you know what, now's just not the right time. Everybody's stressed out, and there's a lot going on, so I'm not going to talk about it right now. We're just not going to talk about it right now. So there's a difference between taking a moment to recenter and refocus on what's important to you and responding with intention versus straight up avoiding or saying now's not the right time. Because if now's not the right time and tomorrow's not the right time and 5 days from now is not the right time, and you get the idea, that distance between feeling when that problem started to happen and discussing the problem grows, and then you're just like, well, it's been too long now. I just need to. He probably forgot. He probably forgot. I'm just not going to talk about it. You know, he said that thing to me before we went to bed the other night, and it wasn't the right time. We don't go to bed with a discussion. So I don't want to have a discussion. I'm too tired. So I'll do it tomorrow. Tomorrow happens. Tomorrow night happens. He says the same thing passive aggressively, and it's having an effect on you. And then it gets to the point where it's been too long, and then you're like, oh, well, that's just the way it is. That's just the way we are in our relationship. And then I bet 3 months from now, 3 nights from now, your response is going to switch because you've been silent, and I bet at some point there's that violence is going to show up. You're going to put in all this effort. You're going to see what you said to me and how much it hurt me, and I'm going to show you that. And you're going to listen. You're going to listen. You're going to take it, because I've been taking it for the past 3 nights. That's attacking, that's controlling, that's compelling the person that you're in relationship with or that you're on your team with, and you're on your team working something out toward just seeing your view. And something that we've said here a lot on this show here during this time in the past, this is actually our 32nd episode, and in the past 20, I'd probably say 20 out of the last 30 episodes, we've mentioned something about how if you don't talk it out, you're gonna act it out. If you keep it in and you pile it on, you're gonna get to the place where you just snap, right? We all have our breaking points. We all have that time where it's just like, whoop, that's it. I'm done. No more. I'm done with it. I'm not handling it. You deal with the kids. I'm going to go drink 90,000 margaritas. You talk to the team. I'm on the team. There's no team lead anyway, so you go talk to them because I've been talking to our team. That's it. I'm out. And you step away completely. All trust is broken. All productivity is broken. The relationship building that was happening there, it's broken. And there's so many things that have happened because you didn't step into this crucial conversation. So we're identifying the problem. Let's take a little bit of a look about how we can start to work towards the solution. Let me fill it here. There you go. This really does tie into our mini-series that we did last week. Last week we did a mini-series on Rising Strong by Brene Brown. And this part ties in numero uno with mastering your stories. Because how do we get to that action? How do we get to start that conversation? Starting that conversation doesn't happen with you verbalizing something out. It happens with you mastering the story. With you seeing and hearing, telling a story, feeling, and acting. So let's unpack this, because those words seem probably a little bit disjointed, or you're like, I can see and I can hear you, and you're making me feel a little bit stressed, and so I want to close my computer, right? That's a see and hear, tell, feel, and act, right? And by the way, this step here also totally translatable to parenting. Oh my word. Like that just now hit me just now. I'm just like, this isn't just for your team and your relationship. This is also for parenting. You see your child struggling. What do you see? What do you hear? You can even get to a point where you're practicing this together, telling the story, feeling, and acting, okay? So when it comes to you, we got to start with you first, right? Oxygen mask. Get your oxygen mask on. Power up. Take care of yourself first so that you can better take care of those that you love, parent, and lead. so you can better serve, so you can be a better version of yourself. That's what we're about here. So when we master our stories, what does that mean? What is all that unpacking? So what we see and we hear, what we tend to do in our brains, and it's totally research based. Again, this is all from Crucial Conversations. This is over 20 years of research and studies that they've done on organizations and teams. And I'm inviting us to assimilate this also to our daily lives. A lot of the samples in here are organization, company, business based, but it has the power to, it sounds very, is didactic the right word? Very extreme to say it has the power to transform your life, but how you have a conversation, 100%, because it's how you filter life. So path to action. Number one, see and hear a story. I'm going to glance at my notes to help guide us in this part of the conversation because it's so crucial. So you see and hear the things that happen around you. So I'm going to give you an example from a past experience of mine. I was a teacher for 15 years, and now I'm more in the role of training teachers, of doing what I'm doing with you all, for educators, for non-educators, and other things are going on also in the background. This is not an interview. I'm going to move on. I get excited about what's like all the shifts that are happening, and I just want to tell you guys everything. So see and hear. Here's my example. I would get a call from a parent, and I was an elementary music teacher, so I taught every child in the school, right? 700, well, my first school was about 720 kids, and then my last school I left, I was there for 8 years, and so I was only at 2 schools, which is really impressive for most educators. And my second school was around 780. It was closer to that 800 mark. So I taught every single one of those kids, and I was there for 8 years, so I saw them through their kindergarten through 5th grade careers, right? And it was a K through 12 school, so I actually got to see them go into middle school and high school all on the same campus. The point there is that parenting, and it's a private school, parenting at that level, a teacher working with parents at that level with that kind of consistency, and also seeing them, going to their middle school and high school basketball games and that sort of thing. It's a really interesting relationship. It's not your typical relationship as far as teachers distant from the students and parents as far as relationships goes. So this parent, she was great. I, might see her on the weekends, but she also had a really, really challenging son, and she was more in that incompetence and laziness. And I don't say that with judgment. She would even say that to you as well, because we had to have some serious conversations, and she would just say, I don't know what I'm doing, so I just don't do it. I don't do anything. She's like, it's easier for me to stay home or to go out and have happy hour with my girlfriends than it is to deal with him because he's so difficult. So it's not. She would say that. All right. So it's not judgment, just laying out the story here for you. But for a while, at the beginning of it, she was emailing constantly. Hey, tell Billy to do this. And I'm the music teacher. Like, I don't get daily emails from parents. I don't see the same child every day. I see your child every year, and I see your child once a week, but I don't see your child every day. And she was piling on me, because we had a social relationship as well, piling on me, thinking that I was going to be the one to transform her child's life, which I would have loved to have. However, she's also running me down, right? Because she's saying, she's also dumping in the email, school email, dumping to me about her classroom teacher that year. And then the next year it was the 2nd grade classroom teacher, dump, right? So that's what I'm seeing, and that's what I'm hearing. That's this first step of the story. So I'm seeing that I'm getting this phone call, and I'm hearing from this parent every day. So the second step is that I start to tell myself a story, right? Brene Brown. I start to create judgments in my head of what that parent is thinking about me. I start to make judgments of my head about what's going on with that parent and why she can't figure out her child. I start making judgments, right? And then I start to feel. and I start to feel like, wait a minute, maybe she's questioning me as a teacher. Maybe she's questioning the fact that I can't provide her child with some strategies to have some independence over making his own choices, and all of the pedagogical and master's degree studies that I've done. And she must be questioning that I don't know what I'm doing, that I'm not a good teacher, because she's on my email every day giving me suggestions. And this was this first period before she gave up, right? And I get to start to feel defensive. So that's what I'm feeling. So then that means I'm going to act. So then I'm going to start gossiping about that parent. I'm going to start telling all the other teachers, hey, you know what? Last year in second grade, that kid was this and this mom was this. So next year, third grade teacher, heads up, here they come. Or I'm starting to hold a grudge. Or I'm starting to even engage in toxic dialogue. And I might even challenge her to verbal altercations. So that's where that story, that really unfolded in a different way, didn't it? So if I wasn't the kind of teacher, would you like that scenario if I was your child's teacher? Would you like to work on a team with me if I did that? Always? So I got to master that story, right? I got to master what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing and the story I start to tell myself and the way I'm feeling and acting about it, because if I don't, that's where that leads. So before we even act or speak, instead of making preconceived notions, now listen up. This is the action today. Before we even act or speak, instead of making preconceived notions, let's rethink the way we are thinking. We have to make an effort to change the story. I have to make an effort to change what I've already jumped to some preconceived judgments and ideas of what that mom is going through. Make an effort to change our story so that I can change my emotions, so that I can change my behavior. Because if I'm not moving through that, then that means that I'm living in a place of that constant, that gossip, that negativity, that questioning my own validity. So this is the power right here, is that we master our stories, that we approach them and we filter them through a different lens. And we say, okay, what do I see? I see a mom who is emailing every day. I see a mom who is consistently, daily concerned about her child. I hear her doing everything she can, throwing at me every tip and tool that she's trying out. A few years later, I hear and I see a mom that's burnt out because this child is now 9 years old and it has been the same, and this mom is burnt out and she hasn't found what clicks. And now I see a mom who's silenced out. I have to master that story so that it doesn't affect the way I feel about myself before I even start to have a conversation with her. It wouldn't have mattered if I went to her when he was in kindergarten and said, listen, Sally, Billy has these signs and you need to figure yourself out because you're stressing me out. And that wouldn't have helped. I'd have to position myself in a place of understanding and to get to this conversation with her with some very strategic tools. We don't always have the luxury of planning a crucial conversation. We don't, but we can practice at it. And we know what it feels like when we're not living into practicing some of these tips and tools and strategies. We know what it feels like when we're not mastering our story and when we're starting to act it out because we haven't talked it out. Talk it out, right? Let that song happen in your head. Whatever can click for you to get you to lock in, to know that before you even start a conversation, before you react, call yourself on it as well. This is also the powerful part with working with children. If you're a teacher or you're a parent, take that moment to be like, you know what? I'm not feeling very good about how I'm going to respond right now. I'm feeling very upset. I know that what you said is my heart's beating fast. My cheeks are red. I'm not ready to respond. I'm going to take a step away. I'm going to go to the bathroom and I'll come back and I'll be ready to respond. Or, okay, you know what? That's not the way I want to feel. You said something to me right now that just clicked for me, and I don't know what I'm feeling yet. And I know that if I launch back at you and I give you a response right now, it's going to come from a place and it's that's not good, and that's going to be a place that, really separates us out in staying focused on our goals. So I'm gonna circle back. I'm gonna take this and put it in my back pocket, and I'm gonna lasso it up, and then later I'm gonna come back on and circle it back, all the metaphors that you need to get you to find a place of centeredness, because we don't always have the luxury of locking into, okay, what just happened? What did I just see? What story am I starting to tell myself? How is this making me feel? And now I'm gonna plan how I act instead of respond how I act. All right, you guys, we did some deep unpacking today. Oh my goodness, I think that's it for today. Let me double check my screen. Ooh, no, I have a quick example and a non-example. Let me see if this is gonna work. This is gonna be my first time. This is public use. It's all of this is coming from Crucial Conversations. If you find something in here that really resonates with you, I hope you're giving it thumbs and hearts, because that lets me know to keep going or to give you more. And so what I'm going to end with is actually YouTube samples of a non-example and an example of putting this story and how you, what the story you're telling yourself, how you act and how you feel, into action, what that looks like and what it doesn't look like. So this is my first time to kind of pop over to a YouTube video. So I'll try it out. Each video is only about 90 seconds. It actually less. It's like a minute and 10 seconds. So even if I lose you guys on audio, will be set, and it'll be like the last 3 minutes of our time here together. I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye just in case I do lose you in audio. Come back again tomorrow. We're going to go another level into that path to action of how to start those conversations that can really improve your life, improve your relationships, improve your teams and your productivity, and really truly better all of your relationships so that you can better parent, love, and lead the teams that you're on and show up for those that you care about. Hope you're still in. I'm saying goodbye, but I'm also showing you an example and a non-example of what these things look like. So let's take a look. Here is a really bad example. All right, so let me get a different screen up for you.
I agree. We need to pick the client up from the airport, but we are not using a limo service. It is over the top and totally unnecessary.
Well, that's just great. Why don't we just throw them into the back of a pickup? I've got a backpacking tent and a sleeping bag they could use in the parking lot. That should make you an even bigger hero with accounting.
Is that what you think of me? That I'm just out to get some sort of recognition?
Hey, don't get defensive with me. But it does seem that what's more important to you is saving money rather than making money. I don't know who you're striking a pose for, but it certainly isn't the client.
Is that what you think of me? That I'm someone who just cares about myself and nothing else?
I don't know, Trenton. Search your own heart. All I know is that I get no support from you when it comes to doing what's best to win new business. There's got to be some motive behind what you're doing.
You are out of control, Jordan. I don't have to take this from you. You know what? You spend what you want to spend, but I am not signing off on your expense reports. You are on your own.
Whoa, you guys, what did you think? I think you got that. I think you did, according to what I was just watching. Watching it on the other side. So yeah, that's not Mm, that did you see that violence happen there? Did you see that shutdown, that silence? Both of those things clicked in, right? I bet you've been a part of a conversation like that before. I bet it might not feel so good to admit, but I bet you have. Because we all have. We've all been there. So that was a quick example of what not to say. So let's take a look when what happens when we do master our stories. When we retell and we go in there and we rethink the way that we're thinking. We make an effort to change our story so that we can change our emotions and we can change our behaviors. Let's take a look at the example. I'll see if I can get it whole screen for you this time.
I agree. We need to pick up the clients at the airport, but we are not using a limo. It is over the top and totally unnecessary.
Can we take a minute to talk about something that's a concern to me? I think we'd both benefit from the discussion.
We are talking about the limo, and I am not taking any more flack from corporate over wasteful and self-serving spending.
Well, I'd like to talk about what our spending priorities should be. When I brought up the idea of having a limo meet the clients at the airport, you made a final statement that we aren't using a limo service.
And we aren't using a limo service. It is not an option.
I don't think we should do it needlessly either. In this case, the client has a tight turnaround, only an hour to spend with us. If we let them get a rental car like last time, we may end up with only 30, 40 minutes for our pitch. We don't have anyone who can pick them up. Now, we've been over these points before, and you don't seem to disagree with them. That makes me wonder if the reason you want to forego the limo is to avoid having to justify the expense with corporate, even if it might be a wise decision. Is that part of what's going on here, or am I jumping to conclusions?
That's not it exactly.
Well, if you see it differently, I'd like to hear your view.
Well, to be honest, we've had so many receipts coming in that have been seemingly excessive. I've had to go back and forth with corporate just to get them paid. I feel like I'm losing credibility with them. My fear is that they'll limit our budget if I come at them with something like this.
All right, so you saw that. A big difference, right? That felt extremely, extremely different. I'm going to transition so you can see my face, and I apologize for that lag as well as that audio. I guess at least you could hear it. You couldn't necessarily see it, but you could definitely see what was happening there. Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any other way to provide clarity on this level of a conversation that how different it feels, right? How different that trust is maintained there on that team. So I hope you found that helpful, and I hope you're still here. I know it was a little bit of a little tech challenge for me, but thank you for your patience on that. And as always, come back tomorrow. We're gonna get into that example that they showed. He did some very intentional things in his response as on both ends. On both ends, they both took another position of mastering that story so that the way that they could feel would more strongly be in line, and to influence their actions, that they would be more in line with the mission and the goal of that conversation, as well as being true to themselves and the best version of themselves. I hope you found this helpful. I hope that you can take what you heard today